Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me Swastika, and without any further ado, let's begin. So the first thing that we know is that we are going today here to discuss the current affairs for July 16th, and let me tell you a little about myself. I have done my Masters in Political Science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. I have done my BA Honours in Political Science from Delhi University, and in case you like my content, then please subscribe. That's the red button at the bottom of the screen right next to a bell notification. So press on it, and without any further ado, let's begin. So in the editorial page today, there were these two articles. One was related to Chinese aggression, another was related to the relationship between India and EU, and lastly we would be discussing some short relevant concepts related to this news which may be tested. So the first article that we are going to discuss is from this page. It's the editorial page, and this is the article at the top, and it's written by Lindsay W. Ford and Julian Gerwitz, so Lindsay Ford is a David M. Rubenstein Fellow at Brookings Institution. Julian is an academic scholar at Harvard University's Weatherhead Center for International Affairs. A version of this piece was published in Foreign Policy magazine. So they are basically saying that China's post-COVID aggression is reshaping Asia. Its moves are spurring support for coordination between other Indo-Pacific partners with their desire for US leadership. So we know that there is a rhetoric that is increasingly gaining strength, which is US versus China. And then there is also a second rhetoric which is gaining even more strength, which is the rest of the world versus China. So this article is basically going to discuss some aspects of it and how countries along the Indo-Pacific are reacting to it. As we have already discussed in current affairs before, that China is increasingly getting aggressive, and the way they are claiming control over the South China Sea within the 9-dash line, they have managed to make a lot of ASEAN countries like Philippines angry. They have also managed to start a border dispute with India, and they have killed 20 of our soldiers. They have basically triggered a lot of people. So Beijing's aggressive is causing countries to rethink their dependence on China. So we have increasingly talked about how a lot of countries are economically dependent on China in terms of, because China is majorly investing in them, and China is also a technologically advanced country. So a lot of countries are dependent on China, including European Union and other countries. So Australia, India, Japan, Malaysia are decreasing economic dependence in terms of investment, manufacturing and technology. So what these countries are doing is that they are trying to decrease the investment and economic dependence that they have on China, from the investment to manufacturing to technological terms. The quadrilateral dialogue between Australia, Japan, US and India is further gaining strength. It is called the quadrilateral dialogue because if India is here, Australia is here, Japan is here, then USA is here. It kind of forms a quadrilateral, and these four countries are increasingly getting pitched against China. We have also seen that the relationship between India and Australia is getting increasingly better. The relationship between India and Tokyo is also gaining better, and ASEAN, the countries that I've already discussed, are very angry because of the South China Sea dispute. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is Asian multilateralism has often been born out of cities. The Chiang Mai Initiative a financial swap mechanism between China, Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia emerged in the aftermath of the late 1990 crisis. The grandfather of all Asian regional organizations, ASEAN, was created in 1967 but did not convene its first heads of state meeting until Southeast Asian leaders were shocked into action by the fall of Saigon in 1976. As Lee Kuan Yew argued, the seriousness of purpose came only with the shock of the terrible alternative. So basically, the financial swap mechanism between China, Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asia emerged in the aftermath of the late 1990 crisis, and this was referred to as Cheong-Mo financial swap. Consequently, ASEAN was created in 1967, but it did not convene its first meeting till Southeast Asian leaders were shocked into action by the fall of Saigon in 1976. So there are some important questions that have been put forth. The most central of them is that the Chinese hegemony is there. China is increasingly trying to be aggressive, and because of that there is a Chinese hegemony. The handling of Trump administration opens its long sought more credible multilateral coordination among allies, pushback against online disinformation, and the desire to better integrate like-minded economies and supply chains. The crisis is also raising renewed questions about the durability of American leadership. So these are some of the important questions that have been raised, and these include that obviously Chinese hegemony needs to be questioned, but who is going to do that? America is in a problematic place because of the questionable leadership of Mr. Trump, and that has been disastrous in more ways than one, and because of that the leadership of America's durability is being questioned. So the series of blunders that US is sort of bottling in is further alienating countries like Australia. So even though Australia and US were sort of having like they were sort of being more they were sort of US becoming better allies of US, but because of a series of blunders, Canberra is increasingly getting alienated. And so yeah, so that is true, and so that is something that we have to keep in mind, that USA went through a series of blunders, and right at the moment when Australia-US relationships were finally getting better, they ended up alienating Canberra. So these are some of the important questions that are there. So then what should US do in order to improve? They need to support rather than commandeer. So this means that instead of adopting a top-bottom approach where they are commanding countries to do certain things, it would be much better if they could adopt a supporting role. This would be difficult with Trump being there. US will have to make compromises. China is its own enemy. Obviously, USA will have to make compromises in the sense that it cannot always be my way or the highway. There has to be a compromise, a discussion, a conversation that has to take place, compromises that have to be made. A little you have to give, a little the opponent has to give, and then there can be some diplomacy. China is its own enemy because of how, so we know that China is drastically emerging as an economic superpower, but it is also it's creating problems for itself by being very aggressive in borders. India, which shares a border with China, has been in a border dispute with China since 1950s. In 1962, we went for war with China. Similarly, in the South China Sea, China is unwilling to give up space within the 9-dash line, and countries of ASEAN are increasingly getting angry. So China is in that sense pushing all the limits. Even in Bhutan, Sakting Sanctuary, which has always been to Bhutan, has been Bhutan's, is something that China is claiming control over. So China is becoming its own enemy because of the aggressive policy that they adopt at the borders. But the problem is also that US is not in a position to offer a clear alternative. So US needs to come up with a better and a more well thought out, put together strategy. And across the Indo-Pacific, we know that there is more support for US and there is for China. So people would, the countries, India and even ASEAN countries and even Australia would prefer to have US in the central role, and they would prefer China. But this can only happen if USA gives a clear alternative. The next article that I am going to talk about is the one on should India believe in EU. So this is on the OP editorial page right at the bottom. This article, this one. This is at the bottom half of the page on the left side. So what this article is about, it's written by Stefania Bengalia, and she is basically an associate researcher in the Center for European Policy Studies. So she is saying that India should believe in the EU. Their ties assume significance as a rule-based order gets challenged by the rise of exceptionalism. So we basically want to enhance strategic and global standing. So these are some of the similarities that we have with the European Union. We both want to enhance our strategic and global standing. We are also diversifying our strategic value and climate change. EU is India's first trading partner. Our biggest foreign investor, 6.77 billion euros worth of investment, or 22% in FDI flows came from EU. So India and EU have always had good relationships, but this is nothing compared to the relationship that China has with EU, where 175.3 billion euros worth of investment has taken place. So that's almost like more than, like, I don't know, 20 times, 25 times of what. So there are certain issues that we need to address with European Union in order to have a better relationship with them. The first is the stagnating FTA. We really need to do something about the free trade agreement. And the second, this basically says a new study from the European Parliament assesses the potential impact of a EU-India trade agreement at between 8 billion to 8.5 billion gains from the increased trade for both sides. So if India and EU finally manage to take the FTA forward, it would be mutually beneficial for both the countries, because 8 to 8.5 billion worth of trade for both the sides will take place. The second thing that we can bond over increasingly is climate change. Both of us, India and EU, we want to develop, but we don't want to put the environment at stake for it. Through its new industrial strategy, the Green Deal, EU is building on this ambitious target to render the continent carbon emission neutral by 2050. India has also announced ambitious targets in Paris Climate Deal. Thus, both sides can collaborate on technology front to achieve their targets. They must address the mutual trust deficit. So there is a trust deficit with EU that is there, and once we are done addressing it, we need to move on and we need to see where we can collaborate. One is obviously trade, the second is climate. So we need to put our faith in European Union, and we need to not decouple but stay with them and see how that works out for us. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is basically something I found on the internet, and I thought this was useful information. So this is about what is China Study Group. It is a government body headed by National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, which has the Cabinet Secretary, Secretaries of Home, External Affairs, Defence and representatives of Army as the members. The CSG was set up in 1976 by the Cabinet Committee on Security to advise policy issues relating to China. It was initially headed by Foreign Security and now by National Security Advisor. So the functions are basically that it was set up in 1975-1976 under K.R. Narayan with a twin purpose. It was to keep under review the situation on Sino-India border, and it was to assist in preparations for negotiations with China on the border question. So I just thought that this is a useful bit of information that we should know. Thank you for watching, listening, and in case you like my content, it will be great if you could subscribe and comment below. what you like, what you don't like, what you're confused about, and thank you.